¿Hablas español? Do you speak Spanish? Probably not. So after this little session, you're not going to be speaking Spanish either, but at least you'll have a little bit of a flavor for for a few phrases, a little bit of introduction, and we'll give you some pointers on how the best way to pick up more Spanish before and during your stay in Colombia. Now, you might not have the best teacher because I'm British, but I have been living in Colombia and Mexico for over 20 years, so my Spanish is más o menos, as they say in Spanish, more or less. And I have um, a colleague here, Franz, who is Colombian, so he'll be helping me and telling me off if I do something wrong. So this is just a brief introduction to Spanish in Colombia. So getting to know Spanish, that's we know that one of the key goals of many fellows and volunteers who come to Colombia with Heart for Change is you want to learn Spanish, which is a great thing to do. You can come and work, have a wonderful experience, and pick up a great skill, which is the ability to learn another language. And Spanish is one of the top three languages worldwide. So Spanish is going to be a great tool for you in the future. So what an opportunity. And the great news is that very few Colombians speak any other language than Spanish. So in order to communicate, you're going to get lots of practice. So we've got a lady here will probably smile. A typical, if you speak English to most Colombians, they'll giggle and smile a bit and say, solo hablo español. I only speak Spanish. So just like many of you would be, I only speak English, I only speak Spanish. So we're in a sense that they're in the same situation as you are. So what a great time. 6 months, a year of an opportunity to pick up a new language. So the other good news is that you've come to the right country. Colombian Spanish is recognized to be one of the best, the purest form of Spanish to learn. It's grammatically correct and generally clearly pronounced. The bad news is that in many regions it is not quite so clear, and you've got many regional words. For example, on the Caribbean coast, you'll find gentlemen like this one who wear hats like this, and they're difficult to understand. This guy, from the different people in the different parts of the country have different names. Someone from the coast is called a costeño, but and if in the plural that would be costeños with an S, but they wouldn't pronounce that S. So if you're a very good student and you know how the word is spelled, you think, where's the S? That guy's not pronouncing it, and he's not going to pronounce it. So that's just one of the things you're going to have to adapt to. Other people from different parts of the country have different names. People from Medellin, there's a lot of you going to go to Medellin. They're called paisas. So another key word, because they won't be called people from Medellin, they'll be called paisas. People from Bogota, they could be called Bogotanos, but it's more likely they'll be called Cachacos. France is going to say a bit here.
Santafereños.
Or what's the other word?
Rolos.
Rolos. So how about Cali? France comes from a place called Cali. They're called Caleños. Are there any other names for people from?
Bayunos, in general.
Okay. So you might have some challenges with different regional accents. But let's start at the beginning. Welcome. Bienvenidos a Colombia. Welcome to Colombia. So that's the first thing you're going to hear. And other common greetings that you'll hear every day are buenos días, buen día, buenas tardes, buenas, hola. So basically, first two are good morning. Buenas tardes is good afternoon. Buenas is
Like every time.
any time of the day. And so is hola. That's really hello. And you can say that any time of the day. So you're going to hear those and you can start to use them. They're not very hard words to learn. So we're starting at the beginning with the simple things, and you should be able to learn those pretty quickly. Now you might be overwhelmed with simple thing in English, how do you do? Colombians will tell you that there are 80,000 ways of saying hello. Just some of them are ¿Qué hubo? ¿Qué más? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo te va? ¿Cómo vas? ¿Qué tal? ¿Bien o no? ¿Cómo te ha ido? So we say 80,000 ways. That's a translation as well, because Colombians do exaggerate a little bit, as you're going to find out. So rather than say there are 20 ways, which there might literally be 20 ways, they're not going to say there are 20 ways. They're going to say there are 80,000 ways. So just as Gabriel Garcia Marquez in his novels of fiction it's said that he exaggerates a little bit. Well, people in everyday life do tend to exaggerate. So people can use these phrases, or sometimes a combination of 3 or more of these phrases. You don't worry. You just say, bien, gracias. I'm fine, thanks. So they're kind of asking you, in theory, they're asking you how you are, but they're not really. They don't really want to know how you are. So don't tell them, I'm feeling, I've got a bit of a headache, or no, don't actually answer the question. Say, bien, bien. But people are very polite, so they're always going to say one of these things when they see you. So always be polite back and say something back. So that's all part of the friendly Colombian attitude, especially to everyone, but especially to foreigners. So obviously one of the first things they're going to ask you is, what's your name? Now, let's just say your name is Caroline. Here's just some ways you can say it. Mi nombre, oh, there's a mistake there. So mi nombre es Caroline, not is Caroline. Mi nombre es Caroline, o yo soy Caroline, o me llamo Caroline. So the first one is a direct translation, my name is Caroline. Or second one is I'm Caroline. Or the third one, I'm called Caroline. So those are any of those 3 would work. Sometimes you're going to have trouble with your name because many people will not catch your name. So the reality is you're probably going to have to Colombianize your name a little bit. My name's Peter. If someone asks me what my name is and I say, me llamo Peter, they'll get the first bit, me llamo, but they're not going to get Peter. If I say my name in a very English accent, they're not going to catch it. So you have to say Peter or Peter. You have to kind of adapt your name in many ways so that they can cope with it. So that's just the reality. One of the other obvious questions that they're going to ask you is, where do you come from? So let's just take the example of the United States. So you could say, soy americano, soy de los Estados Unidos. I'll let Fran say this one because it's a bit of a mouthful.
Soy estadounidense.
But you could also say, soy gringo. Now, gringo, it may be a little bit negative connotations, but don't worry about that. No one really is bad about it. So you find that wherever you come from, you might get called gringo. So just go with it, accept it. Don't fight. So I'm British, I could get called gringo. You could be Australian, you could be African, you could be anywhere in the world, and you could well get called a gringo. So that's just on a basic level. Obviously, once you get to know people better and once you can express yourself a little bit better, you're going to talk about your country. You know, you are going to say, well, I come from Senegal, I come from the Ukraine, I come from Argentina. You're going to say proudly where you come from when you've got a few more words to express yourself. And then people love that. People will love to hear about your country and how it compares and contrasts with Colombia. So It seems like people are asking you questions all the time, but that's what's going to happen. You're new in the town, new in the city, so people are going to ask you a lot of things. So what do you do? Now, you could answer that in two different ways. What do you do here in Colombia? Well, let's answer what you do. You're a co-teacher, but let's just say you're an English teacher because that's much simpler if you're just starting. So if you want to say that, it's soy profesor de inglés. So literally, I am a teacher of English. Soy profesor de inglés. And they're going to get that straight away. Other options, you could say soy docente. Docente is another word for a teacher. You could say trabajo en un colegio. I teach in a school. Soy voluntario. I'm a volunteer. Or enseño inglés. I teach English. So these are just, you could use any of them. These are just different options for someone asking you what you do here in Colombia. They may ask that same question for what did you do or what do you do in your own country. So I'm not going to give you the answer here because there are 80,000 different answers to that question, to use a Colombian expression. So I would say that before you get to Colombia, that's a little task that you can do. So if you're a lawyer, if you're an athlete, whatever you are, find out how to say that in Spanish, and perhaps 2 or 3 sentences about what you do and perhaps the town you come from, a little bit about yourself that you can say in Spanish. We won't make you say it in the past tense. You can say it in the present tense, and people will be happy with that, because obviously the great thing about Colombians is that they are very patient with your Spanish. They don't mind if you're slow. They don't mind if you make mistakes. They're not going to laugh at you. They're going to be very pleased that you're making an effort, and they're going to help you. So you've got a very good audience. You've got very good people to work and talk with, because they have this really positive attitude towards the foreigner who's making an effort, who's come to their country. Now, this is the key question. Do you like Colombia? Now, everyone's going to ask you that from the first minute, from the first hour, from the first day. And they'll continue asking it all the time that you're in Colombia. ¿Te gusta Colombia? They're going to ask. So that means, do you like Colombia? So what do you say? So I would recommend, polite or positive, sí, me gusta Colombia. Yes, I like Colombia. Or even better, very enthusiastic, me encanta Colombia. People will just love you if you say that. And you're going to make lots of friends. So we're sure you're going to say that and you're going to mean it, because we know you're going to have a great time in Colombia. But even if you're not quite sure at the beginning, you might be having a few teething troubles and you're not quite sure, be positive, because people are going to accept you. They're going to be more friendly to you if you talk positively about the country. But generally, if you have a positive attitude, you're going to have a great time here. So the more positive you are, the more you're going to get out of it. We've seen that time and time again of the different fellows who've been here. The ones who are successful are the ones who've got a positive attitude. The ones who look for the bright side always, and get over problems. You're going to have problems, but they're there to be dealt with, and you're going to get over them. So another question, where do you live? People are curious. They might just ask you this. ¿Dónde vives? So they're just being polite. They don't want to be nosy. They're just being polite. So here in Colombia, basically you've got 2 options. En un apartamento, in an apartment or a flat, or en una casa. Depending on the town or city you're living in, there's going to be more apartments or there's going to be more houses. The regional coordinators and the other fellows are going to help you when you get to your city, where your Spanish is not going to be enough to really look for rental agreements, this kind of thing. So this is a key area where you're going to have help, because it's very difficult to do this with basic Spanish. So get your fellow workers. They've been in Colombia for 6 months or a year. They're going to help you through the difficult process of finding a flat. Or even better, they'll invite you to live with them, because they might have a spare room where they're living. So you might have a great advantage in that you don't have to look, because someone's got somewhere for you to live in straight away. How old are you? So, ¿cuántos años tienes? They might ask. Now, of course, you don't have to answer, but if you want to, and let's just say you're 30. So you could say, tengo 30 años, or just 30. So one of the first things you need to learn are the numbers. So the numbers 1 to 10, and then you've got 20, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then you just add numbers. Between 30 and 40, it's 31, 32, so 31, 32, just 30 and 1, 30 and 2, 30 and 3, 33, 34. So it's not complicated, but you've obviously got to learn the basic numbers to start with. Questions, questions, questions. They'll keep asking you questions. So another question they're going to ask you about is the food. ¿Te gusta la comida? They might ask. So again, you could be polite. You could say, sí, me gusta. Yes, I like it. Or, me gusta mucho. I really like it. And if you don't like it, and sometimes it's best to be honest, just say, no me gusta. There are limits to being too polite, because otherwise you're going to be given the same horrible food you didn't like every day until you say no. So you're going to find a lot of different foods in Colombia. One thing, it's not very spicy, so you're not going to find hot food like in India, but you're going to find very varied food from the different regions of the country, very healthy food. So one thing I would recommend is try all the wonderful fruits that many of them you can only find in Colombia. So it's an amazing experience, because you're gonna taste new things, totally new things. So you can't say this tastes like, no, it doesn't taste like anything. It just tastes like what it is. And that's the case for many of the fruits. The fruits you can eat as fruit, or often you drink them as juices. So you drink them as juices mixed with water, or sometimes with milk, like a milkshake. So this is just one of the wonderful experiences of being in Colombia, and trying all these different foods, specifically the fruits. So you're gonna eat, and of course you're gonna drink, and you've got to learn to order the drinks. Here's a couple of examples. 3 cervezas, por favor. 3 beers, please. Una botella de agua sin gas, or una botella de agua con gas. So some parts of the country, you should drink bottled water rather than tap water. Just ask. Many parts of the country, tap water is fine. So you don't need to waste money by buying bottled water, but just ask in advance. So once you know that perhaps where you are, you need to buy bottled water, you basically got 2 options, fizzy or not fizzy. So sin gas is without, is not fizzy, and con gas is mineral water, basically. Most people in Colombia drink huge quantities of what they call gaseosa. So gaseosa is generally a soft fizzy drink, but often it refers specifically to Coke. So someone will say, una gaseosa, por favor, and they will give them a Coca-Cola, because they just assume you're asking for a Coca-Cola. So there are different, again, you've got international drinks like Coke, but you've got local drinks as well in soft drinks that you either love or hate. You'll find them. You find out the tastes when you get them. Postobón, Colombiana, Cola Roman, Ponimalta. Ponimalta is a malt drink, I don't know if it exists anywhere else. It's quite healthy, quite heavy, black drink. A lot of school kids drink that. It's good for growing kids. So you probably find that when you're in your schools, a lot of kids will be drinking Pony Malta. So this is a complicated bit, not just because you're going to be paying money, but the fact that Colombian money is a bit complicated. It's measured by the thousands and the millions. So each month you'll receive more than 1 million pesos to spend. Wow, you got to be millionaires. So the downside is even small things can cost thousands of pesos. And so rather than just saying 2 cents or $1 or something very simple, there's quite a mouthful to say these things. So let's just take a few examples. A short taxi journey, 4,000 pesos, 4,000 pesos. Pint of beer, 10,000 pesos, 10,000 pesos. Loaf of bread, 3,500 pesos, 3,500 pesos. A month's rent obviously depends what city you're in, depends on lots of things, but it could be 500,000 pesos, 500,000 pesos. And then an extreme, if someone's feeling very rich, you could buy a car for 30 million pesos, 30 millones de pesos. So every day you're going to be working with all these big numbers, and it's just part of the culture. So that will be a challenge for you. Right? Sometimes you need to tell people. It's no good just being polite. If you really are not well, you've got to tell people, because maybe you're not well enough to teach, or you really do need a doctor. So it's important to learn the basics on how you're feeling. So just the basic phrase is, no me siento bien, I'm not feeling well. Bit more urgent, necesito ir al médico, I need to go to the doctors. Others useful phrases, tengo dolor de cabeza, I've got a headache, or tengo gripa, I've got a cold. So we're coming to the end, but just a few tips. Obviously in half an hour we can't possibly teach you Spanish, not even basic Spanish. Obviously you can go back to these points and practice them, but there are other better ways of learning Spanish, especially when you're in Colombia. So here's just a few ways to learn. Perhaps the most important is make friends with the locals, or be sociable. Even if it's not your friends, be sociable. Go to the shops, talk to people. You've got the great advantage, as we mentioned before, that people love foreigners. They like talking to foreigners, and they don't mind if foreigners speak bad Spanish. So every single conversation, if you've got your ears open, you're going to learn more. Yeah, you can make notes. Have a little book with you all the time and make notes, and people will help you. You say, "What was that word?" and they'll help you write it down. And they'll help you pronounce it, because sometimes a word written down isn't that easy to pronounce. Watch local TV, especially soap operas and the news, which is what most things, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two, because the news seems so incredible, it's like fiction. And when you're feeling a bit more ambitious, try reading the papers. Just start with the headlines, because the headlines, you can usually get it from the context, or maybe the words are similar to English. And then once you get a bit more confident, you can go into the article and see if you can understand a bit more. A great idea is informal conversation classes. So you have no Spanish, and most of the people around you have no English. So it's very easy to do a deal, either in a formal or informal way. So semi-formal is, you meet someone, they want to learn English, right? We'll meet together for a coffee for an hour. First half an hour we'll speak in Spanish, and the next half an hour we'll speak in English. Win-win. Everyone's happy, and you learn about about Colombia, they'll learn about your country, whatever subject you want to talk about, football, sport, whatever you talk about. So you have a nice conversation, but you're both learning. If you want to do something a bit more formal, you've got many different sources. You could talk to the Spanish teachers at your school. Perhaps they'd be, again, it could be a swap conversation classes, you teaching, they teach, or it could be you pay them to do more formal language classes in spare time. And then if you really want to learn Spanish in a more formal way, you've got local resources. So if you're in a bigger city, you've got local universities who will often have Spanish language classes. You've got language schools who may offer Spanish to foreigners. So explore all these options. There'll be private teachers available to teach you Spanish. So in summary, you've got a huge opportunity. Most people, without doing anything, are going to pick up Spanish. But if you make an effort, you can become pretty fluent within 6 months. And we've seen many, many different examples, specifically with the regional coordinators, who've, in a short space of time, have really picked up the language. And the other thing you can do is, before you get here and while you're here, is use online resources. There are literally thousands of resources to help you learn and practice Spanish. Just Google it and you'll find them and try them out, and that's going to help you do it before you get here if you can. There are also many free applications. Duolingo is one of the most common that people use here, both to learn English and to learn Spanish. So most people can learn reasonable Spanish after only 6 months if they have the desire to do so. So just show that desire. I'm sure you'll be able to do it, and you really have another skill to offer when you finish your time here in Colombia. And if you want to stay in Colombia, you'll be prime candidates for jobs within Heart for Change as regional coordinators or other jobs. Heart for Change is constantly looking for people who've got language skills amongst other skills. So you'll be well placed to get a job with Heart for Change or somewhere else in Colombia, because people who are bilingual have more opportunities. That is very, very clear in Colombia. So many thanks for your time. I'll just say to Franz, he can say bye as well.
Guys, I'm so pleased to welcome to Colombia, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I hope everything is going to be fine while you're here, and just enjoy the adventure. It's going to be amazing. Thank you.
Gracias.